Good morning, everyone. So we will be starting a very interesting instruction course, Career as an Ophthalmic Researcher in India. So I request all the co-instructor, Professor Inder Mohan Rustagi, please join us. So we have with us Dr. Rajendra Prasad. He needs no introduction. A renowned innovator in Indian ophthalmology and being recognized internationally. And I welcome Professor Inder Mohan Rustagi, host of the previous physical AIOC, well managed, and he is a professor at World Medical College, Haryana. And I welcome Professor Siddharam S. Janti. He is associate professor at All India Institute of Medical Sciences, BB Nagar, Hyderabad. So we will start with my talk, that is role of ophthalmic researchers in the current scenario. And the time is 15 minutes for this.
Mathur sir, come to the chair.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, AIOS, for the opportunity. So my talk is regarding the role of ophthalmic researchers in the current scenario. So there are few words of truth and reality. I have an academic conflict of interest because I am a professor and my views will reflect my academic standing. I do have a financial conflict of interest as I am a practicing government surgeon and my views will affect whether or not I get referrals. I have a personal conflict of interest because I work passionately in my profession, so I may be biased. Most importantly, I know that I am talking to an extraordinarily league of scientists and I need to share something that will improve their opinion of me. So I am forced to make comments that I know they will wish to hear. So what is happening? The Makkah and the Gita of publication house, Lancet, they are retracting their articles. So what is happening? So what is the purpose that needs to be addressed? It's regarding the uncovering the truth and in the reality, in the real world, and validating it. So truths, they are not equally generalizable and all research is not equally justifiable. So what is the importance of research? It is the relevance of finding the greater issues like the functioning capacity to act and feeling the quality of life. So the researchers, academic centers, guides and funding agencies must consider truthfully whether a proposed study is intended to uncover a relevant truth, function or feeling unbiased. What must not be practiced? It's dedicating time and energy for a pointless or impractical outcome, publication of an unconnected paper, support of a renowned researcher and a prestigious department are just unjustifiable. And in the present system guided by financial gain, power and prestige, most funds are channelized to improve the cataract surgery only and avoiding other important areas like glaucoma and community ocular health. So this is an understatement that a vision for Horizon 2020 clearly states that vision researchers should never forget that beyond careers, publications and funding, there are patients out there who need and expect a better quality of life. So please researchers, once in a while, close your eyes and imagine what impact an eye-opening research has on people affected by blinding diseases and keep working for the good cause. So the role of ophthalmic researchers is far, far beyond imagination to be practiced. So these are the reasonable questions for ophthalmic researchers. What is the purpose of research? Who decides? Who decides that purpose? The investigator, the academic department, the university, the industry, the state, the sick, or the will? So there is a science behind every research. It is sole purpose is to validate. And penultimate aim of science is to provide results for the real world, and truth is to be in harmony with the reality. So ophthalmic researchers' goal is to uncover and if possible to understand that external reality. Patient care, in contrast, only deals with relevance, whether the treatment or finding will be of any help in the clinical care. So does validity address an important issue? Is unfortunately least concern with clinicians. And COI, the conflict of interest, is a very important aspect of every research. It is governed by the corrupting power of industry, which provided funding in controlling data, manufacturing needs, and influencing practice patterns all over the globe. A financial gain from industry is always a conflict of interest. Industry is not the only one source of biased, self-benefiting research. Academic institutes fund for what they want, how to control data, manufacture need, and influence practice pattern. That is also prevalence. So the data from the ocular hypertension treatment study was not allowed to be seen by anybody except the investigators. So all these things are happening. And it is very much important while doing all the research that COI are an integral part, so no ocular researcher will survive if they don't honor the COI mandatory for personal survival, nor would industry or universities or even governments. COI are omnipresent and yet not detrimental. So, what needs to be the research priority? In accordance to a vision for Horizon 2020, there are 19 priorities in ophthalmic research like neuron-glia interaction, gene therapy in retinal disease, micro-incision cataract surgery, and flags, along with diabetic retinopathy and ARMD. But issues like improving care and care delivery in the third world countries and ocular healthcare within everyone's reach sounds an absolute anomaly. Old school criticism are always prevalent towards new idea like prevalence of glaucoma in normal IOP range and role of ocular blood flow. The European ophthalmologists at higher position were totally dismissive of this idea that OBF has any role in glaucoma. So the importance of studies and publication with no positive result. So 13% of these studies, they don't have any obvious chance of patient benefit. And studies with reasonable chance of patient benefit, at least someday, it's 30%. There might be some chance of patient benefit, 42%. No benefit to the patient, it's 15%. So, research for what? Is it for the promotion, for the name and fame, for the sake of mankind, or for the sake of science? I would say science means in servants to the people. So, research, it needs to be done in collaboration with the academia, industry, and the availability of research facility. But it is not being governed by the patient. So success of any research has led to literally incredible technological advances such as genotyping and VEGF inhibitors, OCT, and phacoemulsification. So for each ophthalmologist's career, there needs to be a balance between business, or they are taking it as a profession, and for the ophthalmic residents, knowledge of ethics is mandatory, and ethical practice and behavior that needs to be inculcated by their guides, their mentors. So clinical trials are there, they can be surrogate or in which patients are also involved. So the patient concerns are how they feel and what they can do, yet these are almost never been studied. The health research establishment has largely insulated itself from issues that most affect health. Hippocratic oath, used in medical schools as something which the graduating students swear to honor, requires physicians to swear that they will not share their knowledge with anyone other than their brethren. And research beyond cataract and flags, is it just fair to be spending a major portion of research money on the development of instruments that will make things better for those who already are good and ignore those who are in the dire need? So academic freedom and basic aim of research to understand what reality actually is and to benefit living creatures. The brilliance of investigators and the methodology of science need to be merged with the compassion of love to produce valid, powerful, relevant outcomes in the long run. So in summary, without honest research and robust validations in our medical field, science simply going to die. In this era of evidence-based medicine, we have simple retrospective study to complex randomized multicentric clinical trials. Earlier obstacles were there like priority of healthcare, lack of funding and infrastructural support from the institutes, and non-conducive environment that lead to exodus of high-quality ophthalmic scientists and researchers from India, but tides are streaming in positive directions now. The methodologies of science are now being applied not just to those subjects that are relatively easy to study, but to the truly great issue of mankind. And ophthalmic researchers are better guided to make sure that their actions are beneficial, fair, and enhance the ability of each person to care for himself or herself better. Up to 65% of US FDA trials are being outsourced to other countries. So in pre-present and post-COVID era, India is a great choice. More and more accredited and dedicated ophthalmic research labs and facilities are coming up with advanced communique and technique levels. PubMed publication from Indian author are on a manifold rise. The agencies like IEC, ICMR, DBT and DST and NIH and of course, WHO are promoting ocular research in terms of funding and appointments. So definitely there is a silver lining for full-time ophthalmic researchers in vastly growing Indian scientific scenario. These are my references. Thank you. Thank you so very much. Any question?
Thank you, Dr. Arvind, for the beautiful presentation about the research and clinical trials, how to go about it. Any questions from the house? And do you have any comment on this?
No, sir. Good.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah. Next. Next.
Next will be Dr. Siddharam. Plan your research. What starts well, that only ends well. Over to you, Dr. Siddharam.
Good morning. Thank you for Dr. Arvind sir for giving the opportunity to talk and plan your research. Plan your research, what starts well, that only ends well. Okay, before planning any research, you have to have pre-planning, which begins with idea, with candid discussions, and to set the investigate the issue. And there are two important points you have to consider while planning the research. It should be time frame and budget which plays important role in research work. What is the primary function of research plan? It will guide research throughout the project. And why you have to write the research plan? It outlines your aims and objectives of the research and justification for doing the work and what are the researches needed and what you are going to do at the end of the research. And these are the elements of research plan. Okay, it may be varies from one research to the other's research and it varies from steps to steps. What you have to know first when you are doing the research, in the first step is have to mention the title of the research plan. It should be clear, accurate, concise and unambiguous and should indicate content and purpose of the study. And title of the research is very important because we are going to mention everywhere whenever presenting the conferences and presentations. And this title should be short and memorable. Abstract of the study, which is synopsis of proposed project, it should be less than 1 page. It should not be more than 1 page and it should include objectives and methods of your research plan. And this is very important because whenever audiences will read the abstract, then they will go through the total manuscript, which helps even you will get funding of the research. Whenever writing, the important part of the research is rationale of the research, why you want to do, and is it relevant to the present scenarios, and what is the importance of your research. Aim of the research is high level statement what you are going to achieve after at the end of the research, and objective is more specific and focused, and it should be measurable, achievable, relevant and time bound. You can remember as a SMART. And hypothesis, you have to mention it, what you are going to generate and test the hypothesis. It serves the planning, collecting, analyzing data and reporting the findings. And whenever we are going to submit research plan for ethical committee or finance or anything, before getting the idea of what you are going to decide about the project, you have to go to the research review, literature review. It helps to familiar with key issues at present and what is the gap between the old research and publications. You can collect not only research papers, it may be also from national or local or organization policy documents. And the heart of research plan is research design and methods. You should describe the methods, technique used, if appropriate, and you have to use the collect, analyze the data, what you are going to do it. There is methods will different from each research plans. Is it your research is experimental? Then you have to divide the participant into test group and control group. In survey, there is you are going to collect the large amount of data. Is it a content analysis? And focus group means you have to group discussion facilitated by moderator. And observational research collects data through the observation in natural setting, because most of the time when you are conducting like refractive error or anything in school groups. And in methods and methodology, you have to mention about what you are going to achieve, what is the limitation of the study. Sample of the study is very important, because once you get the results, you are going to generalize the results and for general population. That is why adequate sample size is very important. And even though you have to mention the how you are going to collect the data, process, store, document, and it's very important in the mentioning the research plan. And before conducting any research, if animals or human beings are involved, you have to get ethical committee clearance from the institute or associations, and you have to mention what are the hurdles, what are the risk involved, ethics involved, and you have to get consent before conducting any research. Another part of research is timetable. You have to mention timetable such a way that it should be realistic, achievable timetable. And if it is delayed, and what you are going to achieve and how to overcome this time. And it helps how long will take each step of your research plan. And most of the time you can use a project timeline in diagrammatic plan such as Gantt chart, which helps time bounded line or bar, enabling to see at a glance which task should be done in order to complete the project on scale. At the end of the research, what you are going to do it, how you are going to disseminate these results. Sometimes these results we are going to present in the conferences or as a publication to help the society or to any manufacturer companies or drugs or whatever instruments. You have to highlight in your research plan. And whenever you are doing any plan, there will be hurdles, that risk assessment. Okay, it may be time scales. For example, in COVID, this research would have delayed. And how to overcome this, you have to mention in this research plans. And another part of this research plan is budgets. Sometimes this budget, if you are not planned, we can in between, sometimes we have to stop your research. Okay, before writing the plans, what are the resources and cost involved, you have to mention that. You have to like stop cost, which include the salaries, overhead resources, equipments involved in doing the research, materials like printing and travel for any meetings, and publication cost at the end of the project. And at the end, how you are going to evaluate this project? It may be feedback from stakeholders, usage statistics, or peer reviews. And research plan, when you are writing, you have to have some references. It should be from the website or documents, and this helps to checking the accuracy and completeness of your project plan when you are submitting for ethics or funding agencies. And at the end, you have to attach needed supplementary information like questionnaires or interview schedule, any other documents to support your research. And further, you have to consider sometimes to get opinion from your colleague, which can give constructive criticism, which helps to your improve the research plan and successful outcome of the project. Finally, take time to reflect on overall proposal at the end. Ultimately, what you are going to meet aims and objective, answer the research question, important in this aspect. Conclusion, before conducting any research, should develop a research plan which include overall purpose of the research, how to disseminate your results, which helps to finish the project on time and within budget. Thank you.
Excellent presentation, Dr. Siddharam. So, means for the sake of residents, how they need to plan their research, keeping in mind a very good publication in the long run.
Okay, you have to go through literature review and identify what is the gaps in previous researches or studies or publications. So you have to identify the gap and plan according to that, which should be new to the public or society, or that according to that plan subject.
Thank you. Now I would like to invite Dr. Rajendra Prasad sir, our terminator, and he will be talking all about clinical trials.
Right. Good morning, and thank you, Dr. Arvind, for bringing me here in this instruction course on research and clinical trials. So, topic which I am going to talk about is what, when, and how about clinical trials. Friends, you know that clinical research is an excellent career, but it's one of the very challenging career also, because in one way, you are going to make a lot of difference to the patient community in their treatment, in their well-being. On the other hand, the clinical trials may be risky also for the patient, those who are actually involved in the clinical trial. Clinical trials, you all know, are the research studies that objectively discover, verify, and compare the results two or more therapeutic measures, devices, or drugs. Now, the clinical trial actually involves the human factor, because the human beings. So, the important point is you have to look into the value of that clinical trial, how you are going to do it, what are the factors you are going to involve into it, and which volunteers you are going to involve into the clinical trials. Because this is going to bring in new ways to improve the treatment and quality of the life of the people, and you are going to understand the disease process and the drug or devices in a more definite way. Clinical practice and clinical trial, these are the two different things, because you know the clinical practice, you are actually looking at an individual patient, or well, on the clinical trial you are looking at a mass population and their well-being, and the research is going to help the population in general. And clinical trials are primarily a planned experiment, and which involves, as I said, the volunteer, the human beings are going to involve, and it involves investigational products which actually we do not know about the effect and the side effects of that particular product, and you are going to use these product in the volunteer human beings, and it involves a healthcare team also, which is going to do the clinical trial and help in the clinical trial. So clinical practice, as you know, it has a set pattern of prescription, because you have a set pattern. You know that this is the disease and you are going to use this drug and that drug, and you expect a successful result in the clinical practice. But in clinical trial, it's purely an investigational pattern, and you do not know the success and the unsuccess of that particular drug or device. And there could be a lot of risk factor, as I said in the beginning, of using these new devices and new drugs. And so because of this, because since you do not know the effect and the side effects of these particular drugs and devices, you have to have the ethical approval from the ethical committee. So ethical issues comes into play where the clinical trial, you are using something new drug or new device is being used in a particular group of people or group of volunteers. And this ethical issues in clinical trial has to be obtained from the human research ethical approval group, and it should be done during the design of the research approach, and it should be done before the data collections commences, because you have to take the approval before you group the people and take up the new device or the drug for the investigations. So I'll just talk about some of these ethical codes which came into play since 1947, and the first clinical ethical code came up, the Nuremberg's ethical code in 1947. Now this code came up after the World War II, and we all know that during the World War II and after that, a lot of experiments were conducted on the people, those who are caught in the war, especially the Nazi experiments. You all know it was very, very famous, the Nazi experiments that they were conducting. Germans were conducting a lot of studies on the war volunteers, and a lot of people were involved in that. And the second was the radiational experiments without any consent and without any permission from the government or from the people, those who were involved into it. They were conducting radiation tests. And you also know that Tuskegee syphilitic test, which was conducted in America. And this was, they were just grouping the people, those who were infected with the syphilis, and without any treatment, they were conducting the test that how long this disease, what this disease can produce in the body. So all these kind of unethical practices were going on before that. So that is why Nuremberg's ethical code came in 1947 to prevent the unethical and injurious experiments conducted during and after the World War II. Now this actually code involved the following points, like you have to take the voluntary consent was essential if somebody is involved in the research group, and subjects were free to withdraw, because there was no compulsion on the people that they have to continue the research method, and they can at any time could withdraw. They banned injurious experiments. There was mandatory animal experiments before the experiments were conducted on the human beings. The scientific validity was very important. Fair subject selection was important. Favorable risk and benefit ratio has to be taken up and seen before you conduct the test of certain device and the drug. Independent review was very important, and respect for all the participants these were the codes which were put on and had to be followed out by anyone who was doing the research during these days. And then later on, the second International Code of Ethics came up in 1964. The Declaration of Helsinki, we all know about this, and this code came up to add up certain other points on the previous codes, the 10-point code which was already there. And this included the distinction between therapeutic research and the non-therapeutic research has to be mentioned before you conduct the test, and an institutional mechanism to ensure that the main clinical principles were followed. So this was another important point which came up in this code, and the provision of proxy consent by family members when subject could not consent for the research. So these 3 points were added, and with the previous ethical code in Helsinki in 1964. And then CIOMS in association with the WHO came up with international ethical guidelines in 1982. So international guidelines came up with certain points that these included the social and scientific value has to be there, scientific validity should be done, fair subject selection, favorable risk and benefit ratio has to be taken up, independent review has to be done, informed consent should be taken, and respect for all the participants was important, because anyone which is involved in this in that particular research should be informed all these factors. So later on, another code came up, Universal Ethical Code and GCP guidelines in 1986. So currently we are following this code, the GCP guidelines of 1986 and the Universal Ethical Code. And these has its 6 core values of the any research which we are conducting. That the first is the trustworthiness, that research has to be with the trustworthiness. The respect has to be given to the people, those who are involved in the research. The responsibility has to be taken by those who are conducting the test, and fairness should be there. The fair research has to be done. Caring and citizenship should be considered in the research. So certain important points while doing the research, the cornerstone of any ethical research is the informed consent. So this is a document where the person, those who are involved in the research, has to be given all the information about the research, what kind of research you are going to conduct and what drug you are going to use. So you have to declare the purpose, procedure, benefits and risk factor of that particular research. So each and every volunteer should know the potential benefits of that particular research, and he should also know the potential risk factors involved in that particular research. The research clinical trials involve have to have a eligibility criteria, because those who are eligible for that particular research, whether the person is eligible or not eligible, this has to be seen. The trial would involve the treatment group and the control group. Clinical trial, the treatment group is given the standard plus the new medicine, while the control group is given only the standard medicine only. And you have to, this is the most important factor, because the randomization is the basis of a good clinical trial. You have to randomize the people, those who are involved in the research. You have to group them into treatment group and control group with the randomization. And the standard and new drug is given to the one group, and the standard and the placebo is given sometimes. The placebo, which looks like the actual drug, but it does not contain any active ingredient. So another important point is whether the clinical trial is blinded or open label clinical trial. Blinded means if the parties, those who are involved in the research, the researcher and the patient group, they know about the research or no, that is important. So involved in the trial, if they do not know, then it is called as a blinded clinical trial. It could be single blind or double blind. Single blind means the patient does not know which treatment he or she is getting. So it's a single blind clinical trial. If both do not know, the researcher as well as the patient does not know about the drug, then it is called as a double blind. So the strongest study, if you are doing, would be a double blinded, randomized, controlled clinical trial. So this is the best clinical trial, because if you are taking these points into consideration, then the clinical trial would get a good result and a strong result at the end. So I will not go into these the detail. You already know the prospective and retrospective studies and pilot study, crossover study. So a clinical trial, basically, when you plan a clinical trial, you have to have a hypothesis. So what exactly you're looking for in your clinical trial, you have to put on your hypothesis. So this is the hypothesis, I'm going to work on this. Then you have to create a protocol of your clinical trial. Then you have to mention about the objective of protocol. Efficacy, outcome, and safety outcomes have to be mentioned and discussed before you start the clinical trial. And you have to take the ethics committee approval before you start the clinical trial. And consent of the participants is very important, because you have to take the good consent of each and every person involved in the clinical trial. Then conduct your study, and then we reach some conclusion, and then generalize the results. So once you get the result, then you can generalize it and give it to the pharma company or the government that this is the result we have got, and so then they can consider about that research and result of that research, whether this particular drug has to be made and given to the general population or no. Then finally the government would decide about that. So thank you very much, Dr. Arvind. I will just finish this talk on.
Thank you, sir, for such an excellent presentation. And nowadays, all clinical trials, they need to be prospective, and they needs to be registered either with the Clinical Trial Registry of India or with the ICMR. Since November 2018, all clinical trials in India, they needs to be prospective and needs to be registered. Now I would like to invite Professor Inder Mohin Rastagi, and he will be speaking on only research is not enough, publication is a must.
Good morning. Thank you, Dr. Arvind Morya, for providing this opportunity and podium. So the topic is only research is not enough, you have to publish it. For the unpublished, there are so many synonyms, that is undisclosed, secret, unrevealed, untold, not published. So which is not published, that is a secret. So always get published. This is a meme. Professor Macwitt didn't publish, so he perished. This is a famous photograph. Sir Newton sitting, looking at the apple. If you'd have only looked at the apple, nothing would have happened. But he published, so we remember him. Things are there on the paper. The tradition of the scientific publication, that is the root of scholarly scientific publication, is in 1665, when Henry Oldenburg of the British Royal Society, he established the philosophical transition of the Royal Society. Publish or perish, a prominent theme that characterizes the need to continually publish for advancement of one's academic career. It is a common phrase, means if you don't publish, you will perish, and you have to publish. It is a thing which was described by the researcher, and for the academic community. If you don't publish, you will bleed all through your life. And in publishing, the one thing is that try again, try once more, try differently, try again tomorrow, try and ask for the help, try find someone who's done it, try to fix the problem, and keep trying until you succeed, means you publish it. It is a call to action. You have to start for the preparation for the publication. Idea would be there, that can go away. Once the idea is there, you have to do the research. Just now the topic was. Again that can go perish. Then you have to write. Again things will not be there. But ultimately one day you will succeed and you can get published. There is no accurate method of estimating the research output of a country, except that is an indirect index, how the number of the scientific publications are there from that country, and India ranked not among the top 10 countries for PubMed publication, in spite of our so huge population and one of the largest medical and scientific workforce. So India is ranking 17th, 20th, 19th, 18th in systemic reviews, meta-analysis studies, clinical trials and randomized clinical trials. And more of the publications were from Institute of the National Repute, and private practitioners, they constitute only minuscule part of that. Yesterday only IJO importance has been shown. So overall impact of the Indian ophthalmic research rank is 16th globally in 2015, and now the rank is 3rd in the world in ophthalmic literature, just after USA and China, and majority were from IJO. So such is the willingness to publish. Publication provides community channels for the researchers, repository of the important research effort, and a recognition mechanism for the researcher. Publication provides, it put you an edge, it makes you the leader. You take the initiative, more the publication, more the credibility. Getting published in well-known media, you are always approved as successful. Those who received scientific training, they in research, they are always at advantage in their clinical decision making. So you become an expert by publication, and expert is who has an extensive knowledge of that subject. These days, the criteria for promotion in medical college also, you have to get published at least 2 papers in an index journal so that you are promoted. And directly or indirectly, publishing required for career advancement and accompanied by monetary rewards also. Also, universities give credit to your meritorious research work and advanced knowledge and innovations. National Medical Council also encourages medical professionals to adopt the latest medical research in their work and to contribute to research. Even in MBBS, regulation or NMC says that before PG students appear for the final examination, they must have presented one poster, one paper at a national or state conference. They must have published or received acceptance or submitted for publication one research paper during the course of the PG. Earlier, how many of the PG theses used to get published in good quality peer-reviewed journal? In 1997, even my work was also not published. So getting published, you have to make the impact, you have to choose the journal, the type of the article, and the way you write the article. When and what to publish, how to write a great research paper, choosing the best journal, open access options, navigating the publication process, and getting the most of the peer reviews, and the most important thing that you have to publish ethically. Don't publish for the sake of the publishing. Do so if you think. Most of you must have seen this picture, 3 Idiots. Kareena Kapoor was just getting married for the sake of marriage, but ultimately she didn't marry. So don't publish for the sake of publishing. If you think that it is worth communicating, it has a clarity of the ideas, it is brevity, and of course your organization, so you publish it. Publication in a peer-reviewed journal is the obvious goal of the most research project. Keep in mind that editors and reviewers, they look for original and innovative research, and of course that adds to their field of study, that must be shedding the light on previous findings or join the dots between work in different areas, and all your conclusion must be sound and based on data. Small is beautiful. Publishing a lot is detrimental to the quality. risk of publications. Competitors might use your data to advance their own research and scoop the original authors in their future publications. They can use this publication or publish conflicting results, and competitors may use information to develop a competitive product or gain commercial advantage to discredit the product claims of the company making the disclosure. Failure to publish is nothing. Combination of factors: being too lazy to try, lacking persistence, too little planning, and if you are not focused. So, writing takes more effort than most people think. It takes a lot more than just sitting down to pen a few sentences. But once you have published, you feel relaxed. So, ultimate gain is professionalize the undergraduate experience, leads to future career path, experience of your publication process in scholarly journal, and improves your writing and research. It connects you with the like-minded researchers. So, how to make it effective? There were no credit for earlier for doing research, so no degrees, and they were not, there was no credit. So, credit has to be given, and in even UG educations, research has been integrated. So, further in postgraduates, they have emphasized on it. So, that is all. Thank you.
Thank you for such a great talk. Any comment, Prasad sir?
You very rightly said by Dr. Rastogi that your research has to be true and of a good quality, because as he said, just for the sake of publishing, your research should not go in a way so that the other people, they take up the issue and they get into publishing a better work on that particular hypothesis or particular. So you have to do a good workup before you start writing it up. Your research has to be true. That is very, very important. You need to take a bigger sample when you are doing the research, and your hypothesis has to be absolutely new and different. If you are doing original research, is the best to do, but yes, definitely you can do the other research also, but your basis of research has to be very, very accurate and very truthful. So that is very important.
Thank you, sir. Now I would like to invite Dr. Manoj Chandra Mathur, who needs no introduction, a renowned ophthalmologist of India and Telangana, and he will be speaking on how to find source of funding, collaboration with pharmaceutical or surgical companies. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Arvind, for giving me this opportunity to be speaking in this research-oriented symposium. How to find source of funding, collaboration with pharmaceuticals or surgical company. My aim of talk today is not to pinpoint a particular company or a particular source for you all to approach. That is not the way to go. But what is the methodology? How this has come into significance and how to look out for funding is the scope of my exposition. The background, TRIPS, that was a watershed moment in 1995. India signed the World Trade Organization's the WTO Trade-Related Intellectual Property Rights, that is abbreviated as TRIPS agreement in 1995. This agreement aimed at harmonizing intellectual property rights and patient protection globally. This provided the Indian companies the same patent protection for their innovations as companies elsewhere, encouraging them to shift their focus from production of generic drugs to innovation of new chemical entities. Till that time, most of the companies were concentrating on generating or producing the generic components of the already researched drugs. So, when India signed this agreement, there was a controversy. Many people said that India will lose access to cheap drugs, but the bigger companies, they saw an opportunity in this. Legislative changes to implement TRIPS in India made possible not only increase the access by innovator companies to the Indian market, but also introduction of globally and internationally funded clinical trials. This gave a major fillip to the CROs, that is the contract clinical research organizations, enabling them to go global, utilize the major markets in India. Data on clinical trials published in the Indian Journal of Medical Ethics show an increase from 64 new trials in 2006 to 245 in 2010 and up to 787 in 2012, suggesting a 1100% increase in just 6 years after India signed this TRIPS agreement. But even then, this was very minuscule. It amounted to just about 1% of the research that was being done in the US. The CROs moved from self-sufficiency to innovative, taking advantage of the shift to collaborative models with outsourcing and offshoring of clinical trials, and certainly not a professional suicide of researchers as the theme of this instruction course. So, what is the basic requirement? That is a proposal to source funding, as the previous speaker explained about how to write your research protocol. Similarly here, how to apply for a source of funding. It has to have a covering letter written specifically to appropriate contact person at the foundation. Number 2, the abstract, also known as the executive summary, that describes concisely the information that will follow in about 250 words or fewer. Introduction helps to establish your credibility as a grant applicant. It can be a 1 sentence or up to 2 paragraphs. Statement of need and objectives of your research need to be specified. The methods, what you will do to accomplish your objectives within the slated time, that is in about a page. Then evaluation measures your research and effectiveness. This should be correspond to your objectives, 1 page. Future funding prospects need to be specified, and last but not the least, the budget of your protocol. Then the next step, once you have prepared your application for your source of funding, first it is important to understand what is the type of your research. Identify your research protocol. First, it is difficult to obtain funding from some sources for research with limited commercial value. Naturally, if your research is not around commercial interests, you will find it a little more difficult to get funding. This classifies as a basic research. We need to explore funding in such cases when your research protocol comes under this basic research from government, primarily carried out through universities or specialized government agencies, or corporations through their research and development departments, providing monetary grants for scientific research areas, science and technology, and social sciences. If it's an NGO or a foundation funding, your research needs to complement the aims and objects of that organization naturally. Some small amounts of scientific research are carried out or funded by charitable or foundations, especially in relation to developing cures for diseases such as cancer, malaria, and AIDS. If your research protocol is commercially viable, then commercially funded clinical research options are possible, with a caveat that such studies are more likely to yield positive results. Research that you carry out in association with a commercial company are expected to give you positive results than when funding comes from other sources. So, what are the possibilities if you are looking out for funding from government, corporations, or foundation grants? There are different funding agencies like the AICTE, CSIR, IOC departments, the Department of Biotechnology, Department of Science and Technology, Technology Information Forecasting Assessment Council, Indian Council of Medical Research, and so on and so forth. If you do a Google search, I just tried what I would go. So, my search revealed 46 lakh results. When I put the thing, research grants in ophthalmology. So this is the kind of possibilities, innumerable possibilities, various organizations that provide funding for your research. You can look out where your research protocol fits in and approach that particular organization to get for your funding. So now the industry-funded clinical trials, whether there is a benefit or a bias. The benefits Clinical trials are primary means to evaluate the efficacy and safety of new drugs and technologies. When published in peer-reviewed journals, the results of these studies not only provide a scientific basis for the treatment designs, but also enable the government and the insurance to plan sound reimbursement policies. Most clinical trials are, however, funded by pharmaceutical companies who have enormous financial stakes in the products being evaluated. There have been some instances, one in US and one in Canada, where the researcher was sued by the company for not getting the desired result. They can go up to that extent. So that is the thing that you have to keep in mind, but how honestly you proceed with your result and how dedicated you are to your research protocol. Further, the scientists who design the research protocol and conduct clinical trials often receive monetary compensation in the form of either salaries or consulting fees. How do medical journals ensure that the data in trial reports are accurate and unbiased? They have to find ways and means to ensure that the data provided conforms to the medical ethics and standards. So industry-funded clinical trials, also there are certain companies who can fund you and who can help you with your clinical trials. So, in synopsis, the TRIPS agreement stands as a watershed moment for the clinical research in India when most trials moved away from genetic reverse engineering towards potential innovation models and got patents. And many top Indian pharmaceutical companies gained by this agreement, and we do have many patents and research patents to our credit of the Indian companies. Prepare your research protocol in the desired format before looking out for source of funding. The aim of this exposition, as I enumerated earlier, is just to prime the delegates as to where to look out for funding based on the design of your research, and then honesty and conformity with the standard protocol is the key, especially for industry-related trials. Don't get swayed away by the companies. You should not come in under pressure of your sponsor to get the desired results in your own interest and in your own integrity. Thank you very much for your patient hearing.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so very much. Now for the last talk, I would like to invite Dr. Siddharam, and he will be speaking on hurdles in doing research in ophthalmology.
Okay, hurdles in research ophthalmology. In behalf of Dr. Morya, he is not able to attend because of some family emergency. I am going to talk about that. Research in the medical field is an ongoing process, and it is very essential for scientific progress. Now, in the era of evidence-based medicine, high-quality research forms the basis of evidence-based medicine. Studies have shown that research training embedded with clinical training programs helps to promote trainage, critical thinking and analysis, and improve the quality of the patient care and facilitate post-training academic output. There is so much hurdles whenever doing the research because of need of proper infrastructure and sufficient fund, along with that dedicated group of workers. The research process requires dedication, time and honesty. In our country, because of lack of healthcare workers, it is not easy to perform the research. And the basic qualities of good researchers include enthusiasm, integrity, experience. Developing countries such as India faces a lot of problems for conducting research, maybe due to people don't pursue the research as a full-time job, whereas the fact is that it cannot be pursued as a part-time hobby also. And second hurdle we will come across is institutions or department heads don't give high priority to research work because of high volume clinical work, more weightage and recognition of the persons. And third one is clinical scientists find the environment in India is not conducive to perform high quality research because they are not well recognized initially, even though they are working abroad and they think they can do the research in India, but it is not well recognized job, and so they consider as research as a professional suicide, and it is not a lucrative and remunerative as clinical practice. Lastly, research ethics are not followed to the core. Due consideration given to all the ethical aspects of research and publication. The barriers to conduct the research for ophthalmologists is due to lack of time, intensive clinical work, lack of mentorship, lack of research training, lack of research skills, lack of research ideas, and not enough impact, and not departmental interest and personal interest, and research is not important compared to the clinical work. And these limitations may be compounded due to inadequate infrastructure and basic training how to conduct the research for postgraduate students. Even though thesis is mandatory to conduct for research, but they are well trained how to do the research. Even though so much hurdles, we can overcome this research hurdles because of so many hospitals in India with state-of-art facilities and well-trained English-speaking peoples, large population treatment, new patients, and good accredited labs helps to enroll compliant subject who can train till the end of the study. India doesn't lag behind good communication information technology capable which are great help in this type of studies. There is easily availability of data entry, analysis and management, and final report writing. There is so much large extent of negative perception of trials in the mind of subject, fast disappointment due to well informed subjects. Before conducting, if you properly counsel the subjects, they will be involved in the as a participant in your studies, and it helps to maintain the good rapport with the researcher. Completion research has no meaning unless it is published. Even though the study done by Daliwal et al., there were around 200 pre-papers are published in 2000 in 2000 AIOC, but 33 papers only published in PubMed Index journal. The other possible may be due to lack of quality research presenting in the AIOC. Kumar Guru published a study titled Bibliometric Study of Publication by Indian Ophthalmologists and Vision Researchers in 2001 to 2006 in the IGO. Their conclusions show that hardening trend of nearly doubling of publication from 2008 to 84 in 2001 to 460 in 2006 by the Indian researcher. However, 50% this publication came from only 9 major hospitals in India. A PubMed research of publication by Indian authors and institution 2008 yielded 16,290 results as against 11,307 in 2005. Means so many publications are come across nowadays. Even though nowadays, to avoid the hurdles of research and to make interest to the professionals, 2009 MCA amendment made to publish research to get promote in their areas. Promotion in the professionals. The scope for research in India is tremendous because of India is a vast country with rapidly improving economy. Nowadays there is so many organizations is giving funded for researches like ICMR, DPT and DST and others who are prepared for your new researches. ICMR has identified the scope of research in ophthalmology and appointed coordinator for various subspecialties. To conclude, India is fast becoming a new destination for multicentric studies. It is time to wake up, educate ourselves with nitty-gritty of research to reap the entire benefit from this favorable trend. A huge potential, we must explore it to the full capacity. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Siddharam, speaking on behalf of Professor A.K. Barwa. And now I request Mathur sir for the last comments and note.
So this was a well thought of and well designed instruction course by Professor Arvind Morya. and I hope the delegates have got their desired benefit, though the physical attendance is not much. This session has been videographed and recorded, and this session will be on the YouTube for the benefit of many more AIOS members in the future. They will get access and they can go through this instruction course at leisure. So all in all, we tried to encompass the gamut of various presentations, right from how to get started, what is the need for research, how to go about making your research protocol, how to publish or go down, like how to publish and perish, and then how to look out for the source of funding for your research projects. So all in all, a very comprehensive instruction course. I hope all of you have got the desired benefit and outcome of this instruction course. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now I invite all the speakers for a group photo.